Welcome to the Vine Resources podcast show. Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources podcast show. I'm delighted today to have Glenn Shoosmith with us. Glenn is the CEO of the BookinBug. Glenn, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
And Glenn, you've very kindly come to our office in central London, and I know you've just come back from the US yourself, so hopefully you're not too jet lagged. But I'm sure you're used to those trips, and we're going to find out more. So Glenn, is it all right if you can just give our listeners a little bit of an introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself and the company?
Certainly. My name's Glenn Shoosmith. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called BookinBug. We do online booking systems. So it started out about 10 years ago as a company to help small businesses take bookings. So tennis coaches, wedding photographers, dance classes, to help the sort of long tail of SMEs take bookings and get their business online. And we sort of struggled to get SMEs really engaged, but what we found in the last 5 years is that enterprises has been an absolute amazing market for us. So we now do white label booking systems for most of the major department stores in the UK, a load of banks and a load of government. So there's all kinds of things from people like John Lewis, Debenhams, Marks and Spencers, to telco stores, and particularly in the US we do a lot of big banks where it's like book an appointment with a financial advisor, that kind of thing. So
is it, what sort of bookings could that be for? What sort of things could they be using it for?
I mean, in John Lewis we do booking appointments in about 22 different departments, from beauty apartments to nursery departments to sort of personal shopping appointments. So it's a real different mix. For banks it tends to be financial advisors. For government it's embassy appointments. So it's quite big, important stuff, as well as just little things to help get people back into the store. I was at the big NRF retail show last week in New York, where we were talking about how to get people back into your retail shops. It's not the bricks to clicks, it's the clicks to bricks. It's getting people back into the retail footprint, which obviously you read in the news so much today about the high street struggling, is a really valuable thing to get people back into shops. So it's quite cool.
And you've got about 120 employees, and you've got offices around the world. Tell us a little bit about that.
So obviously, we're UK based. Our office is in Farringdon, and it's about 120 now. From me writing the code in my bedroom where we started to now, our major office is in Farringdon, but we've got a growing office in Boston, where a lot of our growth and traction is at the moment, and a small little office in Sydney, where we've actually got some great banks and customers in Australia and New Zealand. Fantastic.
So from those humble beginnings of being back in your bedroom, now the CEO of a company with about 120 people and growing, tell us a little bit about what a typical day in the business looks like for you.
Well, it's really varied, and I kind of like that. I think if I was stuck doing the same thing every day, you'd lose a lot of interest in what you're doing. I mean, the good thing, the thing I feel very lucky about is because I was the original coder of the system, for good or ill, I know a lot of the system very well. So I'll find myself, 1 minute, in a senior meeting with a major customer, speaking to directors of a bank or a government or something or other, or a potential customer, and then I'll step out that meeting, and then I'll be debugging code with the developers or looking at some server problem with the engineers. So I kind of like that mix. I think it keeps it real. You don't the whole business, the whole structure, I sort of get to understand all of it, and I like that. And I like that variance as well. It keeps it interesting.
So you're not losing sight of the product.
Absolutely, no chance of that.
And can you name perhaps a leader that's had a tremendous impact on you? It may even be a mentor to you, and perhaps what they've done and why.
I think it's quite difficult to name one person. I'm always jealous of those people that were like, my star is this person, or my mentor was this person, or I really look up to so-and-so. I think, I spent about 10 years in banks and consultancies before starting BookingBug, and I'm a product of every person I ever worked for. I learn as much about leadership from some of my own team, because I grew into it. I'm a developer that then is now the CEO, and I've had to learn as I go along. But some of my team, my commercial director, my finance director, were brought on as fantastic leaders themselves. So actually I learn from them how they run their teams. It's great. But sometimes I feel I've learned more from negative examples than I have from positive. I had one sort of bullying, tyrannical boss at a bank I worked at many years ago, and I was very unhappy there. But I can look back and say he taught me a lot more about how not to do things than about positive things. And I think sometimes, the lessons you learn about how to spot bad behaviours and how to not manage things is actually just as important, if not more so. So I won't name him, but I think the negative examples are almost more powerful.
employee engagement is critical to the success of any business. So what are you doing, particularly from the top within BookinBug, to engage your employees?
I agree. It's one of the sort of core values we're trying to drive, and I'm trying to sort of build the business for the next year, and we put culture on there as one of our most important things. And obviously, it's easy when you're a small team. It's the classic thing, when you hit the Dunbar number, when you hit, you hit 20 people, hit 50 people, hit 100 people, you just can't get the connections. And I've been lucky in the sense that I've had a group of people that have stayed with the business since we were 5 people.
Brilliant.
And they help permeate that culture and keep that culture with everybody else. But we do things like, I don't have an office, it's very open plan. I have a laptop, I move around and sit with different teams. We have, new starters. We do a little sort of pizza and, lunch with me where I get to talk through the story and have them ask questions. And, I'm always of the opinion that everyone's just at the company to do a job, and I'm doing a job the same as everybody else, and that everybody is important, and everybody is an important part of the business. And you need to make sure people feel that, and people feel that they can challenge you and ask questions. We have a 2-weekly stand-up with we have a 2-weekly meeting with the whole company, and different people present stuff. We present all the finances, the numbers, good and bad, where we are on fundraising or clients we've won or lost. And I think that openness and transparency helps people keep the culture, and it helps people keep understanding why they're working here.
Fantastic. Glenn, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing leaders today, business leaders today?
It's a hard one to say. The sort of most obvious answer, the thing that I think it becomes a problem for every company right now is obviously Brexit, and the same in the US. The sort of increasing divide and xenophobia and fear of things. We're at the moment, we're a very international company. We consider ourselves a global company. Our employees in the UK are from all over the world, and I love the diversity and culture of our team. I think it makes it much stronger for being that. But a huge number of my employees are enormously afraid of what Brexit means for them personally. They've moved families here, they've got connections here, and they're really worried about what that means. And we're having to put a lot of resources into reassuring them, and obviously then hiring becomes a problem because of that. And the same in the US. You get to a point that you have to be careful. People can't discuss politics, because what used to be maybe a friendly disagreement between 2 people about the difference in politics has become quite venomous and toxic in the current culture. And you suddenly have to be very conscious about that. People don't want to work with each other because they have that political division, which used to be fine, is suddenly now a bad thing, and it creates divide. So I trying to create a culture that unites and not a culture that divides is a challenge for businesses, I think.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Oh, it's one of those things. You're a sum of all the advice you've ever received, so there's so much of it. It all filters into the back of your head. I think it was a really interesting thing. I went to a great little sort of talk conference last year called the Fast Growth Icons, and they had a speaker there. I can't remember his name, but he talked about, what does your business do? And he talked about your business, people like, your business is to make money, your business does this, and he's like, actually, your business is to make things easy. And I really liked that. That really resonated, and I took that back to the business as a lot of our sort of challenge for our start of year kickoff, because it was like, our business is about making things easy. It's about making it easier to deliver booking systems. It's about easier to launch them. It's about easier for our customers to use them. It's about easier for their customers to use them. It's about, so that, you find if you persist that as a culture to all the different organizations, people will be like, oh, how do I make it easier to support our customers? How do I make it easier to roll out our customers? How do I make it easier for our sales guys to sell to our customers? And it's a simple message that actually really resonates very well. And I think that bit of advice is going to help us scale quite well.
You've now grown to 120 people. You talked earlier about those 5 founding people really understanding the culture. But how do you help now a new employee understand the culture of the company?
I think as I said before, it's like it's things like the lunches with the pizzas and lunches we have, but it's not just me. The culture is owned by everyone in the business, and everyone is responsible for that. So when someone new joins, you rely on their peers to engage with them, to take them out for lunch, to make sure we have like demos and drinks on Fridays. We have table tennis tables. We have all the sort of cliched startup things to some degree, within reasonable budget constraints. I'm very conservative on some of these things, but no slides, sadly. But it's up to their managers, it's up to their colleagues, and it's up to me. But everybody owns the culture. So when a new employee starts, it isn't just me dictating the culture. The culture is everybody, and everybody has to bring a new person into it. So no, I'm very proud of the diversity and all the little groups and subgroups we have in the company that have just started off on their own, whether it's music groups or social groups or tabletop gaming groups or table tennis groups or five-a-side football groups or all kinds of different little groups, and they do that themselves, and I don't have to drive that, and that's when you've got a good culture. So actually it's not up to me, it's actually up to everybody.
That's fantastic. What's the one mistake you perhaps witness business leaders making more frequently than others, in your opinion?
So let he who is without sin cast the first stone. I think I've made so many mistakes myself. I'd be very reticent to judge other people's mistakes, especially sometimes in hindsight. You go, actually, that looked bad to me, but I just didn't know, and actually it turned out to be very good. I think if there's one thing I see in some tech founders, there's a sort of, and you see it comes from, it's almost a reflection of sort of some celebrity of some founders, that they see that they've made it, therefore they can relax. They're like, oh, well, I'm now successful, my company is now a success, so I can now take more time off and relax more and sort of take your foot off the gas and sort of live a lifestyle that you stop driving. You stop driving the business, you stop focusing. At the end of the day, we're still only 120 people. It's great to say we're a successful business, but at the end of the day, we're still a minnow. We still have a lot to prove and a lot to do, and I still have to work, very hard, and there's still a lot of challenges in front of us. So I think sort of complacency is possibly the thing that I see sometimes people take their foot off, take their eye off the ball, and then suddenly someone else has come along and taken that away from them.
If there was one, it might lead on from the other one a little bit, if there was one behaviour trait that you perhaps witness that derails more leaders' careers than others, what do you believe those behaviours are?
Yeah, complacency, arrogance. Again, that's sort of like, I'm now a success. You sort of hubris. You just sort of start to assume that you've got this far, therefore everything will carry on that way.
Yeah.
And also people get caught up in their own celebrity of stuff. Really, I think it's actually why I still like debugging code problems with the engineers, because it keeps your feet grounded. Because at the end of the day, as I said, we're all just people doing jobs, and the company needs everybody to succeed. To get there, and if you put yourself apart from everybody and you say, well, this is now a success and I can now relax and I'm now a successful person, it's like you're not, and there's still a long way to go. So
how do you see your industry changing over the next few years, and how do you think that's also going to affect your ability to attract and retain the best talent?
It's an interesting question. I think the major change has already happened. I think in the last 10 years, I left, I had a degree in computer science, and I remember the milk rounds at university, and the kind of companies that came around were the big consultancies, the big banks, maybe a petrochemical company or something like that. But obviously technology companies themselves didn't come around, it wasn't the aspirational place to go into, the .NET revolution was just starting, but realistically everyone went to consultancies or banks. And I think that's changed. As a developer, it's now it's amazing and respectable to go and work for a big tech company, and they are now big talent sucks of their own, which means that smaller organisations ourselves can feed off that very well. You're no longer having to fight the banks for talent where people just want to go and get a career in banking. So this idea that, particularly when it comes to hiring development talent, which is one of the toughest things to get people into, and also just hiring talent across the board, whether it's salespeople, marketing people, getting people to say this is a great industry to be in, that it's exciting, it's the future, that actually you can have a great career here and a great future here, I think has already happened. So I think that's just going to continue to grow to be this equilibrium with the other sort of big talent pool industries such as banking and stuff. So I think that change has already happened. Now we just need, we need to get back to having more of that kind of people, more development. I mean, obviously the struggle in this country in particular is technology talent, and obviously then post-Brexit, how harder that will be to get that technology talent in.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We've still got a way to go on that.
Yeah.
If you had your time again and were perhaps giving your 20-year-old self advice, what's the one thing that you would say to yourself?
I think it's very hard to say. I wish I had a sort of simplistic, I would tell myself to, sleep more, or do this thing, or not talk to that VC, or talk to that VC, or something or other, or change your business in some way. I think we are the result of the winding path we took to get where we are, and if you try to shortcut that, you don't necessarily know that you'd be better.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen so many people seemingly have better luck than me that actually years later it turned out they didn't at all. You know, that funding round they got that I didn't, turned out that it just didn't work for them. And you know, that VC that turned me down quite often was the best thing, because it made me change my business. It made me understand that what I was doing was wrong. Or, you know, I talked recently about, you know, some time when we were focused on small businesses, where I spent 2 days standing at a trade show trying to sell to hairdressers.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most depressing 2 days of my life. But now I look back and we're selling to large organisations, and I can talk about the complexity of some business models with genuine experience that I wouldn't have otherwise. So I'm not sure I'd jinx it. I'm not sure I'd tell myself anything, because we're in a great place, and it might have taken me 10 years to get here, and sometimes I wish I could have done it in 5 or 3, and you know, you're inevitably jealous of these people that have got this success and suddenly they're where I am today in, you know, a year or 2 years. But I think the chances are that I've still beaten most of the odds to get here at all, and I should be grateful for that rather than try to shortcut it or change it in any way.
That's brilliant. That's great advice there as well. And there is no shortcuts generally. Glenn, thank you so much for sharing that. Can I just, for our listeners, what's the best way they can reach out to the company to find out more about the organisation and about you? What's the best way listeners can connect with you?
That's a great question. I might pause on that one. I mean, obviously we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. I'm not exactly a hidden person, although, you know, spam from recruiters is a separate thing. But yeah, Twitter and Facebook are great ways to get hold of us.
Fantastic, and we'll put the link to the company on the podcast show as well.
Please,
Glenn, thank you so much for coming in. Thanks for sharing that with our listeners, and best of luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your time.